Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Yoma. We are up to Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. Continuing from the end of the previous Mishnah, our Mishnah states another rule regarding immersion. En Adam Nichnas Lazara La'avoda Afilu Tahor Ad Sheitbol. A person may not enter the courtyard for the purpose of performing a service, even if he is completely tahor, unless he immerses himself in a mikveh. Now, this is a biblical obligation. Now, in order to ensure that a Kohen does not serve without immersing first, the rabbis decreed that one must immerse before entering the courtyard for any reason, even if he is not going to serve there. The Mishnah specifies service because that was the subject of the end of the previous Mishnah. The Mishnah now returns to where it left off in the middle of the previous Mishnah with the Kohen Gadol about to immerse. It gives an overview of the immersions that the Kohen Gadol performed on Yom Kippur. Hamesh tevilot v'asra kiddushin tovel Kohen Gadol mkadesh bo vayom. There were 5 immersions and 10 sanctifications, washings of the hands and feet that the Kohen Gadol performed on that day. The Kohen Gadol was obligated to immerse before he entered the courtyard in the morning, just like any other Kohen. In addition, he had to immerse before each of the 4 times that he changed his sacred garments. In total, then he immersed 5 times. The Kohen Gadol also had to wash his hands and feet every time he either put on or took off a set of garments. This happened 10 times during the day, once when he put on his sacred garments at the beginning of the day, once before and once after each of the 4 changes of clothing that we mentioned, and a 10th time when he took off his sacred garments at the end of the day. V'chulan b'kodesh al bet parva, and they were all done in the sanctified area, meaning the courtyard, on top of the chamber called the House of Parva. Now, the immersions that took place during the Yom Kippur service, except the first one, had to be done inside the courtyard, as the Torah says in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 16, pasuk 24, V'rachatzet b'saro b'mayim b'makom kadosh. He shall immerse himself in the water in a holy place, chutz mizu bilvad, except for this immersion alone, the first one of the day, which was done outside the courtyard. The first immersion had to take place outside the courtyard because one may not enter the courtyard before immersing, as the Mishnah said above. It was done in a mikveh above the water gate, which was in the southern wall of the courtyard, as we learned in Shkalim, chapter 6, Mishnah 3. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Dal now discusses the Kohen Gadol's first immersion. Pelsu sadin shel butz beno leben ha'am. They spread out a sheet of linen between the Kohen Gadol and the people for purposes of modesty. Now, the linen sheet reminded the Kohen Gadol that he had to wear linen clothing, the white garments, for the services that were specific to Yom Kippur, and not his usual garments of gold. Pashat yerad v'taval. He removed his ordinary clothes, went down into the mikveh, immersed. Alav nistapag, came up from the mikveh and toweled himself off. Heviu lo vigdei zahav. They brought him the golden garments, meaning the 8 garments that he usually wore when serving in the temple. These 8 garments are listed in later on in chapter 7, Mishnah 5, because 4 of them were made of gold or contained gold. They were called the golden garments. Even in Yom Kippur, he wore them for the services that were also done every other day of the year. Velavash v'kidesh v'yadav v'raglav. He put them on and washed his hands and his feet. Now, whenever the Kohen Gadol changed from the golden garments to the white garments or vice versa, he washed his hands and feet twice. Once before removing the old garments and once after putting on the new ones. Here, however, he did not wash before undressing because washing is required only when removing sacred garments and not when removing ordinary ones. The Mishnah now discusses the Kohen Gadol's first services of the morning. The following services were performed every day of the year, usually by ordinary Kohanim. On Yom Kippur, however, they are not valid unless done by the Kohen Gadol. Heviu lo et tamid. They brought him the lamb for the morning tamid. Kiratzo. He killed it by cutting most of the way through its windpipe and esophagus, which is the minimum necessary for a valid slaughter. Umerek acher shchita al-yado. Another person finished the slaughtering for him so that he could quickly grab a bowl with which to catch the blood of the tamid. Catching the blood, what we call Kabbalah, is a service and had to be performed by the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. Although the cutting done by the Kohen Gadol sufficed for a valid shchita, another person finished it so that the blood would flow freely from the animal. Kibel et adam, he caught the blood of the tamid in the bowl, carried the bowl to the altar, uzrako, and threw the blood against the walls of the altar. Nichnas la'aktir kitoret shel shachar. He then entered the sanctuary to burn the daily morning incense on the inner altar, uletivet hanerot, and to refresh the lamps of the menorah by cleaning out the ash of the burnt out wicks. Ulakriv et harosh v'et ha'evarim v'et ha'chavitin v'et hayayin. Then he went out of the sanctuary to offer the head and other limbs of the tamid, as well as the chavitin and the wine. The Kohen Gadol carried the limbs of the tamid and his daily chavitin offering to the altar and threw them on the fire. He also took the wine and poured it onto the altar. Our Mishnah does not mention the mincha offering that accompanied the tamid because it is included with the chavitin, which was also a mincha offering. That is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have a Erev Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.